in Star Citizen, if any ship is a meme, it's certainly the Constellation. The Constellation has been, you know, it has been the source of much amusement and comedy in Star Citizen. You know, even from the VTOL fans, it's like, so fans work in space. It's just, you know, all this stuff that is just so kind of hilariously out of place on this ship conceptually. But there are several core strengths to the ship, and we're going to be talking about some of these things because obviously I've been playing a lot of the Constellation lately in anticipation of the arrival of you know what ship. I mean, this is the loaner for that ship, and hopefully in the not too distant future we'll be having a lot more to say about that. But not that we already haven't talked about it enough. But we're staying with the Constellation here. You know, the Constellation, because of when it kind of came into the game and because of, you know, the neglect that this ship has received, and it is very much neglect, that bugs everything, problems with the game that kind of manifested on the Constellation more so than other ships. Just the fact that even getting into the ship would often murder you in certain patches. The ship, it became a meme. You know, it was the poster child for Star Citizen at one point, and it very much was also the poster child for a dysfunctional Star Citizen, you know, because it exemplified all that. Imagine, you know, these grand worlds and grand vistas and these cool spaceships, and then you get into the elevator of the spaceship and it murders you. And you're just like, yep, yeah, that's kind of Star Citizen in a nutshell, you know. Still happens on some ships. We won't talk about that. But, you know, I've always kind of wanted to revisit the Constellation. Certainly a year ago, we tried to do that. But at that time, the Constellation flew very, very poorly. You know, I compared it to trying to, you know, flying this ship was like trying to help a belligerent drunk girl down a flight of stairs. It's all over the place, and it was a horrible experience. And I really wanted to kind of confront my opinion of the Constellation and see if that required, you know, a revisit. And unfortunately, the Constellation did everything it could to tell me, like, no, I'm a terrible ship. You should hate me. But, you know, in anticipation of, you know, the great one arriving, I came back to the Constellation to kind of get a feel for how these ships handle. Obviously, it's not going to be a perfect one-to-one, you know, relationship with that ship in terms of flight handling characteristics, firepower, shields, armor, all these things. But it will kind of give you a beginning feel of what that ship could be like, and, you know, what the needs of that ship are, you know, not just from, you know, a cockpit perspective. And, you know, the Constellation does have a great cockpit. I mean, look at it. Yeah, there's a few opaque panels and there's a lot of struts, which is something apparently they're working on minimizing. But at the same time, you have a lot of clear panels and it allows a lot of visibility. There's a lot of good strengths about this ship. And I do have to, you know, when I used to make fun of the ship, I was always willing to come back and say, okay, you know, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Let's go back and see it. And I've been spending a lot of time flying this ship, modifying this ship, trading, you know, trading in different guns for these guns and those guns, and messing around with it. And I have to say that in the last two patches of Star Citizen, it has actually been kind of decent to me. And certainly adding in the docking feature of the snub fighter has been a huge boost to what this ship is going to be. And in 3.14, with getting missile operator mode added to, I believe it's every multi-crew ship where you have a pilot and a co-pilot, allowing a second player to operate the missiles on your ship, though I don't believe you're going to have the capability to fire off axis, which is to say, you know, if you look towards the center of your screen, you have to have a target in there to dump missiles on them. But, you know, if you can concentrate on guns and offload the missiles onto somebody else, I mean, that's going to up your stock. And obviously, CIG is going to be doing some rebalancing of ships and weapons to come with 314 to kind of make up for that missile operator mode, and capacitors as well. I believe, is it capacitors are the main driver behind that? It might just be the capacitors, but there's going to be some very interesting gameplay variation coming in 314. Though I do believe that is probably going to be most felt, most impactful on fighters, whereas larger ships like this that are far more self-sufficient aren't going to feel the bite of change quite as much as the fighters are going to. That's, I think that with fighters being so limited in what they can do and ships like this being so broad in what they can do, even though the Constellation isn't really exceptional in one area, in any one area, it is sufficiently good in all areas that it's still going to be a fairly strong ship. And I feel that, there may be people out there who are looking at this and saying, oh man, look at those guns actually. That's actually not bad. And yeah, I could do a lot of PvE missions, and I got the fuel to get all over the solar system, change around the quantum drive to get even more range. This could actually be a pretty decent ship. And, certainly if it has the speed, so you can get it up to a decent amount of speed, decouple, and woe be the player who tries to follow you. Especially if they're in a smaller ship. I think that certainly there are a lot of people who bought the Constellation way back in the day, who are looking at this moment and saying, this is the Constellation's moment to rise. This is the Constellation's moment to shine. So many things are coming together for the Constellation. It's no longer this neglected, forgotten ship, in the backgrounds like the Herald. This is the moment. And I think that for the Constellation, certainly, this is going to be a big moment. The Aquila and the Andromeda, I think for the most part, are going to be the biggest benefactors because they're the most in reach of most players. And so I think that you're going to see, a lot of players kind of moving who maybe have a little bit too many fighters in the hangar are going to be moving to ships like this. But I also think that this is going to raise the stocks of ships like the Corsair and, in and around that environment, in that area. That players are going to start to look at ships that are a little bit more specialized one way or another, and they're going to say, oh, crap. These are actually damn fine ships, and look at all this space to store things, different armors, food, medicine, guns, all this stuff. And they're going to start looking at these ships and going like, you know what? Yeah. And I think that, we're joking about we're serious about the Constellation being a neglected ship, but this is a neglected kind of tier or area of ships that CIG really hasn't developed all that well. They've certainly gone for the big things and they've gone for the small things, but the medium things have been fairly fairly dry. Most of them end up being cargo ships, certainly with the Raylan recently, we saw that. I think that, certainly the people who've bought the Constellation, they're going to feel vindicated, finally, that their ship has been given its just desserts, its reward, the attention that it needed. And they're going to see that investment pay off, but it's also going to drive a lot of interest in other complementary vessels of the same size, class, and capability or similar. And CIG is probably going to be, kind of playing catch up, trying to put more ships into this area. I mean, certainly fighters are overloaded and capital ships are too expensive. This is really kind of the big growth area for Star Citizen. And I think that you're going to see a lot more resources kind of put behind this because this is what offers the most potential in the future. But when you really do think about the medium ships, certainly, we've made a case for the Constellation. You might be thinking, ooh, it's the Constellation's time. This is it. Other ships, like even the lowly, Cutlass, the smallest of what you might call the medium ships, that missile operator mode is going to be a big impact on the Cutlass, the Redeemer, ships like that. You know, not so much well, actually, technically, doesn't the Vanguard count the turret? Because wasn't I believe the Harbinger was going to allow missile operator mode, or even was it all variants of the Vanguard were going to include, you know, missile operator mode from the turret? So that could be very interesting. But a lot of that stock in these ships is going to be going up, you know, and a lot of interest is going to be there. So if you're sitting there and thinking, well, I guess I got to go out and buy an Aquila or upgrade into an Aquila or an Andromeda if I want to stay, you know, if I want to stay meaningful, or if I want to stay very impactful in the game, you know, you've made a convincing case, Minion Soldier. No, I don't think that it's immediately time to go out and buy a Constellation. But what I've been saying for years, is certainly that the rise of the medium ships. And, recently I've been saying that we are turning that corner. We are stepping into that space now. And with the Constellation, certainly with the fighter now being capable of being deployed, and looking to the future with the ability to perhaps even automate or put NPCs into the turrets, and now with a missile operator mode for your co-pilot, the stock is certainly going up, not just on the Constellation, but on all of these, multi-crew co-pilot, medium ships. Like, these ships all started at the bottom with so many things not enabled in them, and they still shined. The Freelancer, we always forget to mention the Freelancer, but even, the Freelancer miss. All these ships started at their weakest point, and their strengths were already obvious to many of us. And we were like, yeah, these are good ships. These are the future of Star Citizen. And now with all these features being enabled, all of these things, all of these ships, not just the Constellation, but all of these ships are now really kind of stepping right out into the light and saying, like, we are the real ships of Star Citizen. The other ships are the ships of Squadron 42. This is Star Citizen here. And any one of those ships is going to be a bit of a solid pick, And certainly there are going to be ships that you have to look out for in the universe. And, the Ares, both the Inferno and the Ion, do immediately pop to mind as a very dangerous ship for ships like this, but maybe not so much now. We'll have to wait and see how balancing changes things, and how things kind of flesh out. But if you're sitting there and you're thinking, okay, so do I got to get a Constellation? Do I have to get the one with the Ursa ground rover, in the package or anything like that? Is this the time? Is this the moment? Not necessarily for the Constellation, but for all the medium ships. For the Constellation specifically, I would say that the meme has become the dream.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.